Alison Johnstone to speak to and move the amendment in her name.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm grateful that Parliament debates child tax credit cuts this afternoon, though dismayed that such a debate is necessary and that such law has been made by the United Kingdom Parliament through Conservative votes and backing. The Welfare Reform and Work Act, which limits entitlement to the child element of child tax credit and universal credit to a maximum of 2 children from the 6th of this month, is the latest in an onslaught, and I use that word deliberately, of UK legislation which has negatively impacted women and children. Ruth Davidson, in a desperate defence of the indefensible, asks that we look at welfare reform in the round. Well, let's. Engender tells us that of the £26 billion of cuts that will have been implemented between 2010 and 2020, 86% will have been taken from women's incomes. That's the context in which we debate this today. And we were some way away from gender equality before severely gendered austerity was inflicted upon us. In their analysis, the Resolution Foundation conclude that the poorest third of households will be worse off from tax and benefit changes starting from the 6th of April, despite a £1 billion giveaway. That giveaway from the public purse sees the better off half of households receive 80% of the tax cut windfall, and the poorest third shouldering 2/3, 67% of benefit losses. The overall package of reforms, the Resolution Foundation tell us, adds up to a significant transfer from low and middle income households to richer ones. Matthew Reid, the Chief Executive of the Children's Society, said, "The announcement to limit child tax credits to 2 children is effectively a 2-child policy for the poorest families." The Equality and Human Rights Commission, in their letter to the DWP, say that there's no evidence provided to support DWP's assumption that the measures will incentivise families to only have 2 children if they can't afford to have more. And as we've heard, this policy takes no account of the fact that family situations change, jobs are lost, family members become unwell and require care. Many parents are required to work part-time to care for an older relative. The fact is that the child tax credit limit, along with the overall cap on welfare benefits, fundamentally distorts our means-tested social security system, a system based on assessing people's needs and their ability to meet them. What the child tax credit limit means that a family will be assessed, and even when it's concluded that that family requires additional support, that will be withheld. And the Scottish Children's Commissioner is right when he says that when it comes to new benefit cuts, for the UK Government, some children appear to matter more than others. And it's no surprise that he's raised concerns regarding the rights of children affected by benefit cuts with the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. Needs will not simply disappear because Westminster has legislated. Now, we've heard that there are several exceptions to the 2-child limit, including where there's a multiple birth and in cases of adoption. But let's look at the clause that we have discussed today in most detail. Now, I have no way of knowing whether the person who first thought of this exemption, now known as the rape clause, felt that it was a compassionate one. But surely, if you get to the stage where you are asking women to prove that the child they are claiming on behalf of is a result of rape, a single brutal attack perhaps, or conceived during an ongoing, abusive, coercive, controlling relationship, surely you would come to the conclusion that the implications of your legislation, of the impact on the well-being, the privacy of women and children, are completely unacceptable. It will be personally difficult and traumatic for many women to complete this form, and it will be practically difficult, if not impossible, as Scottish Women's Aid and Rape Crisis Scotland wholeheartedly oppose the limit and the exception and cannot and will not collude by acting as third-party reporters for the DWP. And the Royal College of Nursing tell us that they weren't approached by the DWP in advance of its consultation on this exception, and that they do not believe it is appropriate for a nurse or a midwife to arbitrate whether a child is likely to have been conceived as a result of rape. A requirement for entitlement for the child conceived as a result of rape is that the claimant isn't living with the perpetrator. So those women who are unable to leave a coercive, abusive relationship, who have conceived as a result of rape, will have the same pressing financial need to support a third or more child, but not the means to meet the requirements of this abhorrent clause. This wrong policy makes life even harder for these women. We know from the low reporting rates for rape that many women do not wish to disclose this information. I am wholly supportive of efforts to encourage the reporting of sexual assault and rape, but we know, and we know why, many women are reluctant to take this step. There's so much work yet to be done on this front, but we expect women to fill in detailed forms for the DWP. In their briefing, Scottish Women's Aid and Rape Crisis Scotland tell us, "We're in no doubt that this policy will inflict harm on rape survivors. It removes their control over whom and when they speak to about their experience. And this control is known to be a critical element in a woman's recovery from rape. Removing this control risks re-traumatising women." The Equality and Human Rights Commission has written to the DWP explaining their concerns regarding the cap and the operation of this exemption. With regard to the cap, they point out that children have a right to adequate living standards, and these are international rights owed by the state to the children themselves. These rights aren't dependent on the choices or the circumstances of their parents. And the Commission rightly criticised the DWP for lack of a properly detailed impact assessment. The ongoing cumulative impact of cuts affecting women and children is a scandal, and it has to stop. Now, the Scottish Government has the powers to take action to mitigate, to make something bad less severe, as the dictionary would have it. And of course, the Scottish Government must and will look at ways to ensure support for those affected is available. But I campaigned for a Scottish Parliament. I joined Scotland Forward before I joined the Scottish Green Party. Well, Ruth Davidson asks what a Scottish Parliament is for. It's not simply to mitigate the policies of the Conservatives at Westminster. You know, my vision of devolution is proactive, where politicians in Scotland work together for the good of people in Scotland. Ruth Davidson, Adam Tompkins and others appear to have no vision at all of what this Parliament can be about. I support the SNP motion, the Labour amendment, and I move the amendment in my name. Thank you.